This is the hard pill to swallow that I've had to do, and I'm sure all of us kind of have to do this. Um, from the past experience, if you're watching my videos for the first time, lots of abuse, and I'm trying to observe how these abusive patterns keep getting repeated all the time. And I have two boys and two girls. The girls get along great with, very supportive, very loving. I have no problems with them. The problems I'm having are with my boys. Girls seem to be more out of the box thinkers, more right brained, more loving, where boys are tend to be more logical thinkers because they've been the species that um, takes care of, um, provides the food. They're the hunters, and in order to hunt, they have to have rules to catch that animal, catch that food. Where women are more, what does that baby need? How can I understand the needs of a baby when it's crying and not speaking English? You got to kind of be out of the box to kind of sense what the needs of a child are. Where the father's out there working and providing the income and listening to the rules of the game that need to be played. Mothers have to use a lot of imagination. They have to be nurturing, have to use a lot of intuition, where men don't tend to use intuition because there's no experience for them. They're based in rules and logic. But the more we evolve, the more a boy gets the DNA from a mother and a father. They are combining both the male and female experience. And that's why our males are starting to be a lot more compassionate people. They're sort of getting out of that left brain hunter. You're starting to see more fathers be very, very good parents to their children, like house dads, where mothers used to stay at home. Fathers are now starting to do that. And the women are now being more logical thinkers, and they're getting in the workforce. We've kind of done that to ourselves, um, through the experience of every generation. The combining of both DNA from both male and female are starting to match up. That's also a good explanation of why we're starting to experience um, gays and lesbians. It's we look at it as somewhat of a deformity, but it only makes sense that eventually, will we end up being both male and female and don't even need a partner? It's something to think about. It gets a little wild when you go way down that trip. But what I've noticed with my boys, it's so freaking easy to see you're acting exactly like your father. You're using the same words as your father. You've got the same rules of life as your father, just by the the stories that they tell. And I can see that because whenever they make an accusation about me, whenever they let me know what their assumptions are about me, it's identical to what their father is saying. So it's so easy for me to say, okay, you've developed um, how to live life and repeat the same patterns, all because of your big bad father. And the big pill to swallow is that's not really true. I really went out of my way for my kids to be free thinkers. Um, I was never able to voice my opinion. It was do as I say and, you know, shut your mouth. And so when I had kids, I wanted them to have a voice because I never had a voice. So that made my, if I had any form of discipline or don't do that because of this, they would always counter it, especially the first one, who was extremely intelligent male. He would always come up with a really good reason why he should be able to be allowed to do what he wants to do. And I was always involved in the conversation, and that forced me to be smarter than him and have to constantly counter his reasoning, which that experience ended up pushing me to be smarter than him at all times. Never really got there because he's a lot smarter than me. And he would always outwit me, and he would always be on the side of his father. So I always had two against one all the time, and I had to be smarter than both of them. And in the end, they always did win. Even they may think that I was the one that won. It's like, no, you guys really did win. And now when I see that these patterns are repeating and I'm saying, okay, you got that from your father, that's not really true. A lot of things that they're pushing on me is the root of what's driving them to really push me to listen to what they got to say is the love that I taught them. They love me so much and they want to save me just like a parent wants to save a child. The child wants to really save the parent. And let's face it, I sort of crashed and burned from following everybody's advice and finding out everybody just wants me to put, a round peg in a square hole, and that's impossible. Kind of woke up to that. So I'm going to be a lot different than everybody else because I can see a bigger picture than everybody else. I know the direction I want to take. I'm following my own advice, and that's going to go against what everybody else sees and perceives because they all have the stories they wish to believe. They want to believe a lot of mistruths about me. Um, but the driving force of why they are so critical of me is because of the love that they have. I've taught them how to love, you know, and I see that in myself that the more I'm trying to give them advice and save them, what's the driving force behind it? I love them. I want to save them. So in actual fact, in me trying to save them, I can appear to be pretty controlling myself. So who taught them how to be controlling? Who, at the end, if it's the driving force of love, I did that to them. And I taught them how to be smart because I let them have a voice. So they're going to have, their own version of outside the box. They're going to believe in themselves really strong because I taught them to believe in themselves. you know so it's like I created little monsters, but it's the hard pill to swallow of when you can see that what you do actually may be creating the thing that you don't necessarily enjoy. And only when you can see your own reflection can you sort of jump out of that pattern. And I'm starting to see that, and I'm starting to, okay, I'm not going to push my ideas. I'm going to not have this driving love force make me need to save somebody, because it's like that's the controlling aspect of it all, so it's, again, I said it before, I learned my biggest lessons through my mistakes. So I can't take that gift away from my kids. I got to kind of watch them make their mistakes, and but I think I'll be a lot more effective in my communication skills. And I'm finding that people need to see things themselves. So how can that be possible that you get somebody else to see something, see their own logic? It's not by forcing your opinions on somebody, because then the walls go up and then the argument starts, and then you're in a war experience. But if you ask good questions, that seems to be where somebody has to find out their own answers to. If you force somebody to answer a question, they got to come up with an answer. So that's my new approach is that belief really true? Do you really believe that? Like, does that make any sense to you? What would happen if you followed that rule? Um, and then I'm kind of hoping that maybe they'll see things for themselves that way. But I think that they will enjoy being around their mother a lot more if I'm not pushing my opinions my need to save them and somehow get them to support me in the same way and start having no conflicts. It's just a wild trip, and it's a pill that's hard to swallow. But sometimes we're creating our own monsters and we don't even know it. But to get out of it is to say, okay, I was a little crazy, I was a little wrong, and learn and grow from it and move on. Peace.